Hello, everybody, and welcome to the brand new episode of Legends of LOR. Keeping with the tradition of new guests every week, we have two new guests this week. First, we have James.
Yo, I'm James, or as many of you may know, James F. You may encounter me on Ladder or Twitch or anywhere else. Gone by many different meme names like LeBlanc, Anivia, Doombeast, yada yada.
Yep. And then we have our other guest, Sir Hersh himself.
Hello, I am Sir Hersh, also LOR player. You may have seen me on Ladder, and also I am the LOR director for Aegis Esports.
Nice. You know what, James, why don't we start with you? What's your background for Legends of Runeterra?
For me, I've been playing since Legends of Runeterra's first closed beta, and I've played in every seasonal since seasonals released. My best records have been 2-7-2s. Both times I have gotten waitlisted and not gotten into the top cut.
Unfortunate. You also mentioned one of your nicknames as being Anivia. Could you explain that?
Alright, so in the earlier years of Legends of Runeterra's history, I just was a huge Anivia coper, and for the longest time I would just try to make a at least somewhat competitive non-SI Anivia deck. So I just went and made an Anivia deck with every region. Even up to the 10th region, Bando City, I've made a deck for all 10 regions.
Nice. You know, James, it's funny because now I'm the Anivia Coper. Send help. Well, thank you for that, James. Hersh, would you like to go over your history with LOR?
So I have been playing the game since around the release of Go Hard for 1 mana pack your bags. Will be missed.
Fair
RIP.
and balanced, as all things should be.
As always. When I first hit Masters that season, I kind of hit a stump. I'm like, well, I hit Masters. What do I do now? So I started, you know what? I'm going to start competing in tournaments, see how I really do, and realize that a lot of the tournaments that were around the scene were all Brazilian, Latin America tournaments, or just European tournaments, or like barely any tournaments in the America scene. So I kind of got into a rut. I took a couple seasons off, and then I met Red playing League of Legends, and then we decided we found out that we both like Legends of Runeterra, and we decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and kick off a scene for this. Let's give this community something that they really need. And so we created Aegis Esports, and we have been running strong since actually a year and a half ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah,
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah,
Time's flying.
back when you first started and were at Runeterra Academy.
True.
Yeah, it's been 3 whole seasons, and 3 whole times I have failed to win it. Next time for sure, surely.
For sure.
Just like 3 times, I've made playoffs every time. Smooge. No one can keep me from playoffs.
You know what they say, Dragon? 4th time's the charm, right?
Something like that, for sure. Well, got a few things I want to talk with you folks about today. So let's go with the first one, which would be, how do you think the new patch landed? Now that we've had about a full week to enjoy the new cards and see how things are shaping up. As I will say, been a lot of elites this talk on the ladder because that got better. Jace has really been popping up with both Jace Heimer and Jace Lux. What are your guys' thoughts?
Hersh can start us off.
Badger Bear, go Bear. That's all I really have to say. Badger Bear is kind of just OP in running the elite stack meta. Banana Blaster, honestly, I kind of felt like that card was going to flop. Unless Bard makes a huge comeback. They made a statement when they released the patch note saying that, like, oh, hey, aggro decks can use this now. And I'm like, me as an aggro player, it's like, I don't want to use this card. I don't want to spend 4 mana for a 2/2.
But it also might maybe remove something on play, Hersh. Think about that.
But if I'm spending 4 mana for something like that, I'm not really hitting a 2 health unit, right? I'm going to be hitting something that's like 3 and up. and it's still going to be probably on the board still.
And for interesting interaction with Banana Blaster, if you kill it, the skill fizzles.
Weird how that works, right?
I actually did not know that.
Reminds me of when Cloven Way was bugged, where if you kill it, the stun fizzles.
Because Nightfall needed the extra nerf. True.
I also think Skulking String Puller is actually kind of a cool card. I want to see like how people will implement this, whether it's going to be in more spider aggro decks or if it's going to be in like a hollow deck.
Hersh, it's too slow for spiders, and Hollowed already has a better 6-drop called Dancers.
Let me have my cope.
I mean, Dancers is, to be fair, Dancers is a bit worse now in the traditional Red Gwen decks because Katarina going to 2/2 actually hurts Dancer's chances to revive it because you can't revive an unleveled cat
Aight,
as
but
easily.
what if I just kill them with a Gwen?
I mean, that is definitely something that you can do because Gwen is immune. I mean, she's not, but in this game, but you know, she does a lot of damage. It turns out.
Some of the hits I've seen so far from the small time people have experimented with them is clearly blocking Badger Bear, not only a solid elites card, but Lux Jace is also just using it as an overstated elusive blocker. Formula, another hit. Winter's Touch, another really nice hit. We've even seen former world champion Allen make Karma and Nivea with Ramp and Winter's Touch. Mischievous Mirai is a huge hit. Like, so many people are just like, Mischievous Mirai into I just 20-0 you with this warning shot.
Yeah, Mistress Mirai OTK is a bit spooky. I do remember playing the deck and failing every time to get the combo though, and that was a bit sad.
Ceaseless Sentry may not be as big of a hit as some of other stuff, but it's nice that SI no longer has to dip into Freljord if they want a 2-mana 2/1 last breath draw one.
Yeah, it's felt pretty good when I've played it when my Nivea deck having access to like even if you're playing SI failure, you can play like 6 Sentry. Sometimes you want to do that for some decks.
You know
That's
what I
pretty
find funny
nice.
about Ceaseless Sentry?
What's
Yeah,
that?
if you actually look at the card art, it's actually just dead Avaros and Sentry.
Whoa, no way. You don't say, Hirsch.
So, Generous Gemcrafter, it may not be a hit right now, but like once people actually figure out if it's just Splash 2 of as like the Drizoff or Fognal meme, then it could be just a solid like, oh, here's another threat you have to kill.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
a 3-mana 2/3 that just buffs your entire a random ally in your hand. It's kind of pretty strong. Like you're most likely going to be forcing something on this to take it off the board, right?
yeah. Starlit Seer has seen some splurges of play in the past, and because its effect is quite strong for buffing the top card of your deck. And Generous Gemcraster doing it to hand is much more powerful because you get access to the card sooner and you have a little bit more control over what you are going to be buffing up. Because you can like try to save the units you want to buff and play the ones you don't, you know?
So for Starlit Seer, are we talking Ezreal Sage, Teemo Sage, or like Ezreal, Teemo, Freljord? Like which one, Mo?
I was actually more thinking of way back in the olden days of Aphelios Temple getting Starlit Seer, or like Fizz Starlit Seer.
Moving on. The proper way for a Banana Blaster isn't like Bard buffing or any of that. It's you take your Jhin, you take Timelines, you have Timelines Banana Blaster, and you just slap them with a here's my Crocolith. Goodbye to anything that has 7 health.
I don't know about that one.
All right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Hirsch?
I don't know about that one there. I just think Banana Blaster is kind of a miss of a card.
Hey, you know what though? At least we can say Banana Blaster wasn't the biggest miss this patch because Priestess exists.
So
True.
I'd agree that Priestess would be the bigger mist if she wasn't bugged right now where you only need one champion in your deck.
I mean, I'm assuming that's going to be getting fixed shortly, but even after it gets fixed, still thinking she's not going to be very good. I don't even know if I play her in Singleton, honestly, where like she's supposed to shine.
Alright, so for the upcoming Singleton Runeterran Open, you're depending on if they go with the old Singleton Gauntlet of just one deck, or if it's best of 3, then if it's one deck, you're going to see a lot of Seraphine piles, and then for people who might want to play to beat them or don't want to play Seraphine would go Targon, SI, Freljord, Ramp, Shihu. Because we need to remember, Singleton lets us have a third region.
Yes, that is true. I'm actually interested to see what three region combos we're going to get and why they're all going to be degenerate. It's going to be interesting to see how that shapes up. Last time we had Singleton, I never really played Singleton until it was gone, and then I didn't have a chance to play it ever. So I'm interested to see how Singleton's going to shape up, even if it's going to be a little bit less competitive than the best of 3 formats we're used to.
So Formula is probably like a bit too overtuned currently. If anything, the nerf is either one of two things if they wind up nerfing it. Formula to either 7 mana or only refill 2 spell mana.
Yeah, I can definitely see Formula getting touched in the future. It is very good for the region. It fixes it, like revived Jace a lot because it gives you a good play on early turns, and it gives you refill for later turns. Solves a lot of the deck's problems.
And if Jace is flipped, you just draw 4 cards.
Yeah,
I'd rather just shoot my opponent for 6.
but why don't we draw 4 cards? It sounds
But,
fun.
but here's the thing, James. You still can shoot your opponent for 6 if you're at 9 mana, right?
True.
It also really revived Jace Lux more than Heimer Jace, because Heimer Jace had no problems with draw and like being a competitive deck. Jace Lux had a lot of draw problem issues, and this card just fixes that. And also, if you get Lux to stay on 5 and on turn 6 you have free bank spell mana, you can double laser people with Formula.
This is true.
Can't confirm I've been double lasered by a Lux this patch. It's not fun.
So Winter's Touch, the new 4 mana Freljord ramp. And this, at first, when I first read it, I missed the Enlightened I cost one. Like, I saw the draw one, but I missed the I cost one section. This card, very helpful for Freljord ramp. Did they need it? It's
No.
very debatable.
No.
Like, if they've needed it, then maybe. But there's a lot of cases where they just got the wild mysticism, so they didn't need more ramps so soon.
I agree completely. I was very surprised that they printed a new ramp card instead of a new ramp payoff. Because we haven't had like a new ramp payoff in Freljord in almost 2 years, because Warden of the Tribes is not a ramp payoff.
What about Big Pig, Wrath of the Freljord?
Like I said, we haven't gotten a new ramp payoff in a while. Because I also don't count Big Pig, because Big Pig is just isn't that interesting or that good even.
So the thing is, this isn't actually Freljord ramp support. When you open Winter's Touch's full card art, it's Rise support. Because everyone knows Rise clearly needed support. Smile.
Yeah. It's crazy how Catalyst went from the best ramp spell in Freljord to now probably not even being run in most Freljord ramp decks that aren't like turbo ramping.
You still want it because it says heal, and you want to consistently draw ramps, so you'd have free Winters, free Mysticism, 2 or 3 Catalyst, depending on if you're on one of 8 mana 1 for your draw and FTR still.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing turbo ramp, you probably want like triple ramp spell. But if you don't want triple ramp spell, then I think you just don't play Catalyst. You play the other two instead, because
I think You'd still play Catalyst just because of those cheeky Decimate gamers still around.
I can agree with that.
That's fair.
My hot take is I honestly don't like Winter's Touch. I hate just spending 4 mana for a mana gem without like a real payoff. Like while Mysticism and Catalyst gives more of a payout, like it's more justification to spending that 1 extra mana for a free unit or 3 extra or 3 healing.
So the thing is, if you Winter's Touch on 6, you still have 2 mana left open for a Vile Feast, a Sentry, or even the Troll 2-drop that's a 0/4 if you behold a 8 cost, grant me free attack.
Yeah, Troll Scavenger.
But like no one's running Troll Scavenger, right?
I
Not
have
right
it as a
now.
1-of.
I mean, I think it's starting to see some play in FTR list because it is very good against elite, like Demacia decks right now.
Oh no, if you see elites even with that in FTR, you still want to press that top right, bottom left.
Honestly, elites isn't that bad for SI Freljord decks if they're not extremely greedy versions. Like if you're playing your AoEs, it's actually still pretty winnable. Because while
Yeah.
1 AoE isn't enough, 2 AoEs almost certainly is. And if you wipe their first board, it's very hard for elites to come back, especially if you're on Ruination. Because with Ruination, you can beat Champion Strength.
Oh, see, if you're playing Blue Chicken in the current meta, you're actually better against elites than FTR.
You see, I've been playing a lot of Blue Chickens. That's where I'm talking about this from. FTR probably is worse because FTR is probably playing a much greedier deck and not playing all the AoEs.
Yeah, like
I still have 2 Avalanche free Ravine, but it's the, oh, I have to run buried so I don't kill my win cons.
Yeah, Ruination I think is pretty good right now as well.
yeah, just elites into any SI region deck or even decks that run Avalanche. Like if you're not able to get online earlier with your Battlesmith, or just to buff up your 2 health units to 3 health units to put you out of range of Avalanche and Ravine, it's just kind of miserable.
So Hersh, here's the thing. Battlesmith, last I checked, Battlesmith and Doggo and Sifri are the only ones that are 2 health or less for the early turns. And even Doggo, it's you have to kill on sight, otherwise it becomes a free.
But also we have wait, why can't I think of the name of this card? I actually have to look this up while I'm here.
Are you thinking of the birds?
Yes.
Silverwing Vanguard?
Yes, thank you.
I've been seeing a lot more elites cut them. Because why just drop that when you can stick with Bannerman, Garen, Profit?
Because it's develop 2 units at burst speed, or develop 2 units for 1.
And choose your, and then you get to force better trades because you can pull stuff out of the way.
I think it's honestly a great card. Just any card that develops another unit on play is just really nice.
Yeah, sounds about right. I think these new cards have definitely shaken up the patch, and the balance changes as well change things up quite a bit. Like I haven't seen any go wide aggro has been a lot less good this patch in my opinion because Reveler's Feast is no longer existing. I have definitely noticed that I am seeing less of that and seeing more things like elites and Kale Leona.
Man, fucking Bandle had to ruin aggro again.
Dude, it's the Tristana conspiracy theory. If a card is good with the Tristana, it must be nerfed. It's
And
just the rules.
that explains why Bandle City ruined Atro as well.
I'm so glad that Atro got nerfed. I've been waiting so long for Atro just to be moved to slow speed.
The problem wasn't Atro, it was Tristana's too cheap that, oh, you can play 2 Trist in a turn and still have Atro up. Atrocity had so much counterplay and was very easy to play around.
I mean, it's harder for aggro players to play around because you just sit there, you hold your mana up while I'm now forced to commit so much to try and kill you. Whereas you just commit this 1 spell after I commit all my spells on the stack. And what do? I just sit there and cry.
Have you considered just not crying instead and killing them? Because now you can, because it's slow speed.
Exactly.
And also, they're not running it.
The last new card we hadn't gone over Serene Sky Singer, which a lot of people had hope and hope for when they first saw it, because it's a when someone reduce the cost of spells in your deck by half rounded up. But little did they know, it didn't work how they wanted.
Yeah, once I found out that it didn't actually have the mana in the favorable way, have the mana in the unfavorable way, I got off it a lot faster, and I think almost everyone's off the card at this point. So I don't think there's really much to say about this card. It's like kind of not hitting anything.
The ribbon changes just did absolutely nothing, and I don't understand the point of it. And
you know what? The point of it is for that one player who's still playing Ribbon, that one game where they get 3 blade, they make the blade and play it before they draw their first Ribbon. It's for that one time, for that one player, Hersh.
So the Ribbon change 2 things. One fits with how the lore devs have been wanting. Oh, you can level your champs so much smoother. That's the whole reason they did playcast. So, champs like Heimer, Jace, Lux, etc., they flip so much easier, and the player flipping them gets that dopamine hit compared to before when, oh, my champ didn't flip, I'm sad. And the second thing for Riven is now you can cast your fragments all at once without having to hold on to that last one until you find your Riven, and then you can just be like, I kill you now sometimes.
Yeah, I haven't noticed any more Riven in any of the games I've been playing since this change has been made. But you know what? Good on them for making this change. I think it's a positive.
But like
overall.
the devs even said in in the patch notes, like, yeah, we're not expecting this to really do much for her, but hey, here it is.
You know what, guys? They had to hit their quota. They had to get Riven in the patch notes once per year, and this is their one time per year. And now they don't have to put Riven in the patch notes ever again. They can just forget about her.
True. Super back under the rug.
Yeah, Riven is not one of the most powerful champions, it turns out. We can talk about the buffs and stuff, but none of the buffs have really been. I don't think any of the other balance changes have been that impactful.
The biggest buffs are the 2 Evelyn cards, Steam and Domination.
Yeah, I guess Steam and Domination have actually mattered. Yeah, you're right. Because Evelyn has gotten a lot better. Steam and Dom have been showing up in other decks too.
Domination didn't need for +1 health. Like, everyone's favorite play pattern's back, but no one wanted it back.
We don't talk about everyone's favorite play pattern.
Also, I think Bandle Painter is huge.
You are allowed to think these thoughts, Hersh. They are not allowed to be correct, though.
I think the Bandle Painter changes is huge. I don't care what anybody says. I think that's massive.
You're right, Hersh. It gives me another card to hit off of my Bandle City Mayor. It is a buff somehow.
Exactly.
Steam, the fact that it's grant strongest enemy vulnerable, I feel like it's them also slightly trying to restore some semblance of an identity to Bilgewater, like with Mischievous Mirai being added and the Steam buff. It looks like they want Bilgewater's identity to be 1 kegs and 2 granting vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think they've succeeded on that. So yeah, a lot more Evelyn been seeing play, a lot more interesting decks with Mirai have been cropping up. I'm not sure how the meta is going to shape up going forward, if we're going to see anything new emerge, or it's just going to stay what it's been recently, which is like J stacks, Elite, some Kale Leona, some SI Freljord control decks sprinkled in there. And then there's like a few other things that are cropping up. There's some elusive decks. There's some Evelyn's popping up. Rise is showing up for tournament meta, but that's about it.
It's
The reputation buff everyone didn't notice because it nerfed Ravoon was Ravoon going from 6 health to 5 health, secretly a reputation buff.
Ooh, that's right. We can now kill Ravoon with Bloody Business from our 5-mana units. You see, guys, we were worried that they forgot their token reputation buff this patch, but no, Riot's got us covered.
True.
All right. Okay, so now I think that's actually enough talking about the patch. So I want to go into the other topic I had in mind for this episode, which was to discuss an interesting topic, which is what do you guys think are some of the best champions in the history of Legends of Runeterra? Not just talking about like the
Twisted
best
Fate.
champions now, like best champions of all time. This is a discussion I had in mind for a while, so I wanted to see what you guys were gonna think for these champions.
Alright. Playing since the first closed beta, the one that sticks out a lot, and I'm glad she never actually went live with Quick Attack, was closed beta Fiora, which was free Quick Attack Challenger.
And the same level up and winning condition text as well, correct?
Yes. Yep. Just kill 4 units and win the game.
Yeah, that would have been a
No, thank
little
you.
bit problematic, I think.
No, thank you. I'll pass.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the fact that Rising Tides we had burst and yielding Monka.
Are you telling me that wouldn't have been a fun time to play the game where you had to either play Ionia or you played Fiora?
Hey, Bilgewater had Devour of the Depths. You just had to make sure that Fiora wasn't more health ever.
True.
True. Also, Riptide if you had Nautilus in play,
So true.
because people forget that card shuffles in the deck sometimes.
Or
Sunk
one
cost
of,
was not in the game, Hersh.
How did you know I was gonna say
Because
that?
Sunk Cost is a Tom Kent support card.
Tom Kent was statistically one of the highest win rate cards in the game for a time.
I don't think Suncost is a Tom Kench support card. I think Suncost is an Eniamore support card.
Nope.
Yeah, so closed beta Fiora I think is probably up there if we're gonna count closed beta. I don't know if we should count closed beta because I think there's a lot less people who had access to the game during closed beta. For example, I don't think Hersh or I played it during open beta.
Nope, I did not.
And they had a lot of changes that happened during closed beta as well compared to the game live today. A
So,
lot of reworks.
closed beta, there was another monstrosity, but luckily people didn't discover it till open beta, which was Ezreal Karma. If closed beta people played Ezreal Karma, you had flipped Ezreal that gave you 0 mana Mystic shots when he hit face.
Yeah, actually, Ezreal is one of the first ones I wanted to bring up as one of the possible best champs in the game's history. And I talk about Ezreal, I'm not talking about the version that got reworked to like deal 1 when you play a spell, deal 2 if it's targeted. I'm talking about OG Ezreal, which was deal 2 when you play any spell.
Oh, we talked about that one when he was at 10, 8, or 6 to flip.
Wait, well, he was at 6 at one point?
Yeah.
I knew he was at 8. I knew for.
Don't you remember Freeze Ezreal with those L-nuts?
Oh my god, that's right. I forgot Elnux was a competitive deck. I think he was 6 in closed bid. I think he was 8 when the game launched.
Oh, no, it was still 6 for Freeze Ezreal L-nuts because that was
Freeze Ezreal Elnux did not make it to live.
that was live during the open beta.
Oh yeah.
Was it-
When I say live, I mean Rising Tides patch.
Man, all these boomers saying, my bad, all these zoomers saying Rising Tides is when it went live. The game was live during open.
I mean, when I first started playing in Call of the Mountain, like I still saw a lot of people running like Teemo Ezreal.
Oh, that's because Hexcore Foundry was actually good with those champs, and the game was in a state where, Invokes was really good, so if you play Teemo Ezreal Hexcore Freeze, you beat Invokes a lot of the time.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
also beat a lot of the controlling decks as well.
Like Deep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I guess you did beat Deep because you had enough freezes. Also, I think Teemo Puff Caps also emerged after Ezreal got reworked to his 6 spell form to level up, so it was actually decently easy to flip him. And since everything is burst speed, it dealt the damage.
Yeah.
This I will say, so one thing against Ezreal would be that this is before play cast changed, is when he was as OP as he was, because that meant you had to actually have the spells resolve with him alive, which meant that he got killed. It didn't work, but Ezreal Karma abused the shit out of that because you just played 5 burst spells and killed your opponent.
We don't talk about Ezreal Karma.
Yeah.
Ezreal Karma was a fun deck to experience. But speaking of other cards from Rising Tides that are really good, some of the best champs, Twisted Fate and Vi, I think, could be considered some of the best champs in the history of the game as well.
I don't know about Vi. I don't remember. I don't.
Oh, Hersh, you didn't play during Rising Tides. You never experienced 5 health tough Vi. And because it was still Rising Tides, your best ways to kill Vi a lot of the time were vengeance her or have enough mana for your Thermo. But back then, vengeance was still 7, so you were using your whole turn to kill a Vi. And back then, you also had 3 mana fast speed relentless, so you just used Vi as your splash for elites to just go, ah, you're dead now, Mr. Opponent. I banked 3 on 5 and slammed Vi.
Yeah, 5 health Vi was just so good because it almost always 2 for 1 at a minimum for your opponent, and always traded up, whether it be mana or cards. And the only reason I don't think Vi gets talked about as much is because she died in one patch. So she got removed very quickly. And because the best deck in the game at the time didn't play her, which was Champless Burn. And Champless Burn is arguably definitely the best championless deck in the history of the game, and arguably one of the best decks in the history of the game as well.
I miss Champless Burn so much. Champless Burn was so fun.
Hersh, you just said you didn't start playing till Call of the Mountain.
Yes, and I still play Champless Burn and Call of the Mountain.
It wasn't as broken, Hersh.
But like, I had to start somewhere, and I didn't have any champions. And what am I gonna do? Play Elise Darius? No, I'm just gonna play Champless Burn.
You could play Champless Mistwraiths. Mistwraiths was a competitive deck during the Targon era.
Yeah, Pale Cascade 2-1, baby.
Literally, first seasonals, people talked about Mistwraiths a lot.
Yep. Mistress was a very good deck at the time, but yeah. So we talk about Vi. What about Twisted Fate? Because Twisted Fate, I think, is a bit notorious for his role in a specific deck, Twisted Fate Fizz.
Yes. Do you have Mystic Shot on 4 or lose the game?
I mean, Twisted Fate had like more staples and like more than just that deck. Like
Twisted Fate was in a competitive deck every single patch until his nerf, and even since then, he's been in a competitive deck almost every patch as well.
I agree. Yes.
It's like thinking about it, like he was in Go Hard. He was in the original TF Swain.
Yeah, because people didn't experiment too much back during then. But yeah, TF's 2 most notorious and famous tier 0 decks were TF Aphelios and TF Fizz when Temple still granted 1 health.
I would argue he actually had another one, which would be Go Hard.
Yeah.
Because I think Go Hard was pretty close to a tier 0 deck for his time, and he was definitely a very big part of that.
You were very consistent with flipping TF every game and basically just getting everything out there.
So Go Hard would have been tier 0 until they printed stress testing, and then it was, oh look, Fizz literally denies all your Go Hards because I'm playing TF Fizz with all these cheap spells now.
Well, you see, James, they nerfed Go Hard before they released stress testing, actually.
Yes, and that deck just
Go Hard. Yeah, Go Hard was out the door when the time TF Fizz was rising to prominence, and then they released stress testing and Wiggly Burblefish in the same patch, and it exploded.
Yep.
Actually, no, wait. I think Burblefish came out before stress testing.
Was Aphelios out with 1 mana pack?
No. Aphelios was released after they nerfed pack. Also, I think I probably should be mentioning what these cards changes were, like, because don't think I did that for Twisted Fate, which would be Twisted Fate used to level up on 8 cards drawn, and its champion spell, pick a card, used to be draw 3 mana, draw 3 cards fleeting instead of draw 2.
Was it draw 3?
Yes, it was draw 3.
So essentially what you could do is you could play pick a card, and that was like half of Twisted Fate's level up right there, because you draw 3 cards from that and then 1 card for round start, and he's halfway to leveling up already. Good luck.
Ah,
yeah.
So, fun fact, guys. Aphelios, it's looking like he was maybe released before the pack nerf.
No, he wasn't. I remember distinctly that.
I have looked this up. The pack nerf happened at the beginning of the year, and Aphelios was released at the end of January, roughly.
Yes.
Also, would you guys consider a release of Aphelios one of the best champs in the game or not?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because decks like when Aphelios came out, Lucky Draw with Aphelios TF Zoe. I think that's what it was. It was Aphelios Zoe, and I think it was TF. That deck was absolutely bonkers.
you didn't run Zoe. You wanted free TF and free Aphelios.
I think it did run one Zoe though, right?
No.
No. I think the funniest deck though was the one that played Tom Kench, so you could play Twisted Fate Fizz still in your lineup.
Yep.
But then you also beat the mirror because you just ate their Aphelios and Twisted Fate.
I don't think I remember that.
That was one of the meta choices at the time. I mean, I would say Aphelios was definitely release of Aphelios was definitely good. I just don't know if I would put him as one of the most broken champs, and considering that like how strong Twisted Fate was at the time, and how we kind of have most of Aphelios now, with the exception of Crescendum. To be fair, Crescendum is definitely a lot weaker now than it was then, because like you could build your deck around it and do some very broken things with it. But Aphelios is like barely seeing play right now currently, and I think he was definitely propped up a lot by his support cards being a lot better, and the game just being at a little bit lower power level at the time. Like Veiled Temple Aphelios was a very big player in the meta back then, and Veiled Temple has not been seeing any play since its nerf. So
Yeah, I think Seraphine and Bard just kind of brought the deck back to life, or brought Aphelios back to life, and then ever since Bard just fell out again, Aphelios has just fallen off.
Aphelios has seen some play in some other decks since he got reverted. Like Winding Light, he saw play, and he saw play in Leona Aphelios, which is a bit of a Winding Light deck.
Yeah, it was a bit of Winding Light and also an Atro deck. Rip Atro.
But you
Rip
didn't really see that a whole lot. It wasn't like really predominant.
It was so the free Leona decks around the time with Aphelios SI Winding Light one were Aphelios Leona SI, the Fiora Leona Demacia, and then the up and coming rising one that took off just a bit before the seasonal was Leona Katarina Noxus. An aggro deck.
Yep. I wonder how that deck turned out.
I see people playing Kale with Leona now instead of the Katarina.
Yeah. I can agree with that one.
Yep. But awesome. Some other powerful champs though throughout the game's history that I'm thinking of right now. So let's go a little bit further into the future, because I think there've been some champions that have been released since then, or like after like Rising Tides, Targon, and stuff like that have been good, but I don't think I would say that they're some of the best champions. I think we want to keep going more towards some of the better champions in the game's history. We then get, I think the next one released, I believe, would be Poppy. I don't think there's anyone better than Poppy that got released before her.
I'm trying to think.
Was Echo released before Poppy?
Echo was released before Poppy, but I really just don't consider Echo to be one of the strongest champs in the game.
So
while I say he is like very strong at an individual level, I just don't put him as strong because he only has one region pairing, which is Shurima, because his own region is not able to support him. He requires you to have those other cards in your deck and be built a specific way, but when he's built in that specific way, he does some pretty powerful things. It took a long time for his deck to be built, though. It wasn't until like people really trying to break him eventually figured out a way to play him. We're able to actually get him to work. Like it took Skaithis like quite a few months to be able to finally figure out the builds for Echo before he finally became the tier 1, or like not tier 1, like a good, solid deck to be able to play in the meta. And I wouldn't say Echo has ever been a tier 1 deck in his existence either.
The thing with Echo is they put all these restrictions and hoops around him because they know that Echo's raw power, and if he didn't have all these deck building restrictions, would just be able to take off and be that dominant. Because he's just if unanswered, he gives you free draw every strike. So even on defense, if he lives a block, he gives you free draw. And let's not just forget about his real win con and broken effect. His mana, his rally is still the only free mana rally in the game. And not only is it free mana, it revives your whole board if you trade it away.
One thing I will say about Echo is that like he does some very powerful things, like you said, but because of all the hoops that you had to jump through, like you said, that like, put a lot of restrictions on his flexibility and what he can do, I just don't think he's the best one. Like something I would consider to be one of the best champs in the game.
Going on before Poppy, Zoe.
Zoe has never really been the best or considered the best. She does powerful things, but she isn't anywhere close to someone like TF, Kaisa, Vayne, even Pantheon level.
But this is like back on release, Zoe release. She's one of the champs that you require to have an answer to. Otherwise, she's just gonna get out of control. And if you let a Zoe flip, it's just get the entire game right there.
That is true.
And she's just an infinite value generator if you just let her do her thing.
The problem with on release Zoe was Go Hard was pretty not long after, and like, oh, you were never allowed to play Zoe on one. And while Zoe's level up is very strong, it's not a game enter in the same way as if you saw flipped Pantheon on that turn, or on release Kaisa on 5, or even 4 free Poppy drop on 4. Like, Zoe level up takes a lot longer than all those things, and it does impact the board in a big way, but it's not, oh, you win that turn then and there a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of champions that if you are able to get the flip, you're not winning then and there. You're still taking at least 1 to 2 turns to still secure that win. There's only a handful of champions that really secure you that win once they flip.
And Hersh, that's because they've been driving LOR in a direction where they want games ending on turns 6 to 7, 7 at the latest. Which is why the original Anivia, whose level up was just have the egg survive a turn, the biggest nerf was Anivia having to be enlightened to level up.
Definitely changed how Anivia was played, because it has like an open beta thing. But I think Zoe is good. I think she is, like, generally speaking, a very powerful champion who does powerful things. But I think she's like never really been like the best. Like, she's never been the biggest player in the game, in my opinion.
It's also her region. Like, if it were just Zoe Targon, Invoke is like one of her identities and probably the best way to work with Zoe instead of a buff one, and that takes too long to actually close out games on its own.
I mean, for the longest time, though, Zoe Lee Sin was just so dominant in the meta. It lasted like what, 2.5 expansions?
It lasted a year. So the
lasted
thing is,
until Crescendum got nerfed, and by nerfed I mean changed.
The thing was, it wasn't a Zoe Lee deck a lot of the time. It was more a stall deck for most of those metas it was in.
But enough about Zoe, I think. What about Poppy? Because 4-3 Poppy was I think 4-3 Poppy is probably the best Demacia champ the game has ever seen. I think like the only one that comes even close is Vayne, and I still think Poppy's better than Vayne. Because 4-3 Poppy did some crazy things.
I
Yeah.
can agree with that.
4-3 Poppy literally made anything good. You even saw Drizoff was like, I'll just slap an Anivia, and Poppy even made Anivia good.
Yeah, no, like Poppy on 4 just buffed your entire board, and if she ever got to flip, I think I've only lost one game where my Poppy was flipping. Everything else, like if Poppy flips, that's almost always just pushing for lethal.
For big decks where Poppy Z rally spam or for Poppy Ziggs burn, both very not fair decks.
There's a few others as well, actually, which was Poppy. Did Poppy Tarek see play at this point in time, or did it not see play
No.
until later? Okay. I mean, Poppy Tarek probably saw play. It just was completely overshadowed by the other ones.
Yeah, Poppy Tarek what could have seen play. It's just the other decks were much faster and did more broken things.
Yeah, another one is a Poppy Bandle Tree. Poppy was also seeing play in Bandle Tree decks.
God, Bandle Tree always comes back up, huh?
Yeah, it's like pretty crazy. Like Poppy was like seeing play in either the rally decks with Demacia, like Demacia Ionia, or she was seeing play in like aggressively slanted decks like Ziggs Poppy Burn. She's I saw giving a Bandle Tree an aggressive win condition as well, because they could just beat you on board with Poppy, because all of a sudden all their like really small dinky units just became threats.
Was the Poppy Lux Shellfolk deck before or after Poppy's attack got nerfed?
It was before, because Poppy buffed Shellfolk and Radiant Guardian and Lux.
Man, I'm so glad I took off Beyond the Bandlewood.
Yeah. Poppy did some pretty crazy things. And like any deck could just throw in 3 Poppy and probably be pretty decent because of just how strong she was. Because she just like gave your board +1/+1 when she attacked. It's a 4/3. She was always buffing your entire board the first time, and usually the second time as well. And it was just so hard to come back if they swung once, because their board was so hard to kill now. And like their other, because you get to deal with Poppy, but you also deal with the rest of their units that got buffed as well. And yeah, you just ran over games you couldn't deal with Poppy on 3. And because at this time, Demacia had Sharp Sight is +2/+2. They also had some other. If you're playing Ionia, you could play Twin Disciplines, so you weren't even able to kill Poppy with damage removal spells sometimes. And you're throwing a Vengeance at Poppy while you still had their other units on board. It was crazy, man.
Yeah, and Young Witch was still a 1/2 back then.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, and then when they nerfed Poppy, they released Yordle Explorer, which is like.
And with the release of Yordle Explorer came another degenerate deck. On release, Kennen Ezreal.
On release, Kennen Ezreal. Yep, Ezreal coming back up yet again. As a, what? I feel like Ezreal isn't the best champ in the game. He's just the best champ to get abused for his level 2.
Exactly.
Like Ezreal has only ever been played, except for Tribeam, to get abused his level 2 to just kill people. The only time he was played semi-fairly was in Tribeam decks.
We forgot a champion that was also released during 4-3 Poppy, Nami.
Oh yeah. +2/+1 is pretty crazy to think about in hindsight.
On Nami's release, she didn't need 8 banked spell mana to flip, she only needed 6.
No, she needed 7.
I thought it was 6.
It was 7. It got increased to 8 afterwards. Yeah, no, it's only 7.
Still wasn't enough.
Because I mean, the big thing with Nami is that she gave +1 health for her level 2 effect, whereas now she doesn't give any health. She just gives +2 power. So the idea was that you just had a board full of elusives and you could just make them unkillable.
I also tried to forget the Sparkle Gun times.
Yeah. At this point in time, when Nami was released as well, Crescendum, does still not change what it is now. So it still summoned a 2-cost ally from deck. So and Sparklefly was still 2 mana when Nami released. So what you did is you just pulled out some Sparkleflies with Nami, and then you just ignored your opponent and healed the full and killed them.
Sparkle Chad.
And as we've seen with other problematic cards like Temple and even Plaza, it wasn't a grant, but it still said give +1 health. Things that say grant or give +1 health in this game are problems. And they
Nami
wind up
was
being
grant. Nami was grant +1 HP, James.
exactly, and now she's no longer grant 1 health.
Nope. Yeah, I think Nami saw a lot of play and did a lot of things until she eventually lost her power at the end. But
Can we talk about my favorite card on release? Mr. Bard.
oh my god, Mr. Chime-Man himself. All right.
Mr. Chime Man. I miss turn 1 pulling all 3 of your chime.
Wait, did you actually do that, Hersh?
I've done that multiple times in the allowing deck. I've dropped a 5/4 burn on turn 1 and the opponent does not have.
So
I've only ever hit like an 8 chime on turn 1 and made my opponent cry. I've never done that. Oh my god, that sounds
Bard's strongest feature wasn't his effect of the chimes from turn 1 onward. He was only a 6 package, make anything competitive and broken. You just put in your 3 birds, 3 bards, then picked whichever region you felt like that you wanted to put with him.
Hey, you also played 3 Esmus.
True.
Esmus was good, but it wasn't
some
as
of them
needed.
played. Some of them played 3 Esmus. But yeah,
The core was just Bird and Bard, and that's how we saw decks like LeBlanc Bard appearing, Vi Bard, Jinx Bard, Freljord Bard with their Overwhelms, Ari Bard with Elusive, Poppy or Galio Bard with just go big and then rally.
I have a question, James. Who do you think had more tier 1, more like high tier decks for around them? Would you say it's Bard, Poppy, or Aphelios?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Poppy.
I think I want to say it's Bard because I think
so too.
I think Bard had a lot of decks that were built around. I think I can think of at least 4 right now, which would be Demacia Bard, Freljord Overwhelm Bard, Ari Bard, and then Alawi Bard.
So the thing is, while Bard had tier 1 decks, Poppy, it took them forever to actually nerf Bandletree, and Poppy was part of Bandletree even after she got nerfed. Just to fill the quota of, we have like a cheap Demacia, or we can still use Poppy because most of the Bandle shitters are like low enough power, they just grow when Poppy swings.
True. Also, Poppy is probably the best Demacia card you can play in that deck for like Bandle Demacia.
We also forgot the one Bard deck that saw play after the Bard nerf, I think.
Oh, Maokai Bard?
Yes, Maokai Bard.
No, we said Bard Alawi.
No, Maokai Bard.
I still to this day don't fully understand how that deck did as good as it did. But dang, was that deck fun to play?
Looking at it on paper, it's like what the hell is this? This is just a steaming hot pile of garbage. And then you just see it in play, and you're like, what the hell just happened? I just lost this deck. What?
Exactly, dude. You're like, this deck's playing Maokai. How can it be good? You know?
Yeah.
All right.
Any deck that can make Maokai work outside of Deep.
So two very powerful champs we're forgetting that have abused combos of Scout plus X or even just Scout Elusive are Pantheon and Kaisa.
Yeah, I think those are probably the last 2 to consider for the best champ as well. Because on release, Kaisa was absurd. So changes from today. Kai'Sa's second skin was focus speed, so she could do it and then attack, and you couldn't react. And then her champion spell was 3 mana instead of 4, which is grant an ally elusive or not elusive, spell shield and overwhelm. So what she could do is on her attack token, if she got to live, and like say you didn't kill Kai'Sa and then they pass back to their turn, they could just play second skin on their unit they want to copy, play play overcharge on that unit, play second skin on that unit afterwards. So now all Kai'Sas everywhere have spell shield overwhelm, and so does that ally, and then also whatever keywords they have, and then she can just attack you. It was absurd.
You're able to get a maximum of 4 keywords, I think, because like it was like with the whole combo was you play Valor before or a turn before, and if Valor just sticks on the board, you just overcharge, get spell shield and overwhelm, and just put Challenger and Scout on your Kai'Sa straight away.
Yeah, and also Kai'Sa was like such a fork for what your opponent could do, because like if your opponent had Valor on board, you didn't kill it in time, and they played Kai'Sa, you now have a really hard choice of, all right, am I killing Valor before they can play second skin, or do I kill the Kai'Sa? But then they still get the challenger stuff.
Yeah,
Sometimes even if you've dealt with a Kai'Sa on 5, they could also sometimes just drop the Void Blasters that were just 6 attack overwhelms that also had 6 health.
Yeah.
And those were the times where you ran 1 or 2 copies of Voided Bomb.
Because it was also 8 mana at the time.
That was also the time that I still to this day think Kai'Sa is cursed, because that was the season that my desk completely shattered on me while I was playing Kai'Sa on ladder.
Dude, also I think that has to be one of the least diverse metas in the history of the game. So I think everyone agreed that the best deck at that time was Kai'Sa. And people were just like, all right, we're just banning Kai'Sa and playing other decks mostly.
And Kai'Sa literally turned it so that for an entire patch cycle, we had maybe 500 Masters players, if that.
Oh my god, that's right. That's right. I forgot. Kai'Sa's season had probably the lowest number of Masters players of any season, because people just didn't want to deal with her.
And Kai'Sa's season was the last one before they did the LP changes.
Yeah. And I believe after Kai'Sa got nerfed, there's like a huge influx of Masters players as well.
Yeah, I think like after Kai'Sa got nerfed, we had like the highest number of Masters players we've seen, or was that the season after?
That was the season after, because the season after was when they did the LP changes, and it's just been very high numbers ever since then.
We saw like 6,000 Masters players.
Oh, so that's not even the highest. The most recent ranked season that ended with the last seasonal, Americas had almost 10,000 Masters players. It didn't reach 10,000 at the end. It got close with 9,600.
Like right now, we're sitting at 3,000.
Yeah, no. LP changes have made it so much easier to climb. And speaking of things that were so much easier, Pantheon was so much easier to win with. 2 things. One, he was a 4/2 on release, which meant he did that little bit of extra damage. And second, Scout used to be in his pool of rollable keywords. So you could just roll elusive Scout, spell shield, and say, all right, opponent, you played a good game, and you're dead.
Was he a 4/2?
He was a 4/2 on release. And another thing is, because he has natural overwhelm, it always means, no matter what keywords he can get, if he's bigger than your units, he can just get through them.
And Pantheon, his attack nerf was just before they made playcast change happen.
That's right. I forgot that Faded. You used to be able to deny Pantheon triggers by killing the unit in response to things like Zenith Blade.
And Pantheon, on release, the Faded units were a lot more fucked up, like 2/4 Wounded White Flame, 1/2 Saga Seeker.
Yeah, every Faded unit has been nerfed at this point, except for every original Faded unit has been nerfed at this point, because that keyword is pretty good.
Right when they did the Wounded White Flame and some of the other Pantheon deck nerfs, they all would have been fine until the playcast change happened. Because playcast meant that, oh, you can no longer deny Pantheon procs, and if you wanted favorable trades, you had to pre-commit against a lot of your faded units. Otherwise, they just cast one Pale, one Guiding, up, you just lose that trade again.
Yeah, another thing is that like fast speed spells they proc faded beforehand, so for things like Furious Wielder and single combat, they get the buff before the strike, which means they're dealing more damage and more likely to kill your thing and stay alive.
Yes, sir.
And Pantheon is the biggest reason and probably the biggest problem of why they had to take Scout out of the keyword pool.
100%. He was definitely the biggest reason. I mean, Victor and this is also around the time like people were just doing ambush Victor shenanigans as well, and they're like, all right, enough is enough. But yeah, I think that's most of the champions I would rank at the top. What anything you guys think we missed?
Nora.
Nora.
We did miss Nora. Nora, I think honestly, they out of all that we've listed, Nora, Pantheon, and Bard are by far the most high rolling champions there are. Just because you're literally flipping the coin on whether you're gonna hit the weighted part of the coin or not with what you're gonna generate out of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, hey, you know, sometimes you can roll Scout Elusive life, like, you know, like you could play Pantheon, you're like Scout Elusive Spell Shield, and sometimes you just roll like Impact and a bunch of other useless keywords.
Exactly. But like just Nora on release was such a fun card just to play around with, just to see what you're gonna hit off the portals. The portals were such an interesting mechanic.
Yeah. And honestly, as strong as Nora is right now, I don't think I would rank her among the best in the game because while she is good at like throwing units in play, actually like closing out the game just takes so long with Nora that quite a few decks have ways to just like not die to them. So Nora feels kind of like Banditry in a sense. And, like she's really good at shitting units into play, but those units aren't always great at closing out the game, and they can be very susceptible to late game strategies, like such as Field of Rush and like Rise.
Well, the whole point of it was like I think people came to the misconception that Nora was supposed to be a game closing champion. In my opinion, I don't think she was. I think she was just supposed to be a board refill champion. Just to like be able to stall out for your other win con. She became more of a support, but like early on, you were able. There were decks. People were trying to like turbo flip the Nora by like turn 4 or 5, and by then you're going to be generating your higher cost portals, which your stuff off your higher cost portals are going to be able to close out your games for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's just like so much to depend on. Because you have like so many bricky cards like from 5 and up that they're not going to be as much game closers.
Nora's deck building is also like not as committal as you'd expect it to be, which also puts her power a lot higher than some other champs.
Yeah, I would say like most of the Nora package are cards that you honestly you don't mind playing. So I'm thinking it's Junk Construct and Portapalooza are the main things that you want to play with Nora. And those are already good cards. Honestly, Portapalooza is seeing play in some Bano decks that are outside of Nora. I believe I've seen it a few times outside of Nora.
Yeah.
And like like those are already pretty good cards, and like playing them with Nora makes them even better. And yeah, I will say she's strong. I just don't know if I would say she's the strongest.
So Nar and Vayne. Nar is a powerful one, not because he was a 4-3 at the time or his flip. It's because he took so many of those mid or average performing decks, gave them enough of a win rate boost that he made them look better than they actually were, and brought some decks even to tier 1 when they shouldn't have been. And then for Vayne, Vayne speaks for herself for the most part, because on release Vayne a free 4, so she survives most things early on, and she gave you a free mana tumble on release.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
those are all valid points.
I also missed one champion. I'm sorry. Aatrox. Aatrox just on release, it just kind of dominated the whole meta pretty much. It made Kayn playable card. He was just being able to slot in with other decks as well, with like Kindred, the funny Kindred line or Kindred SI. What else? We had Vanetrox, which was a really nice go wide board tempo deck.
So the thing with Aatrox wasn't that he made Kayn playable, because Kayn was playable with Vayne and other decks before Aatrox. Aatrox, as many people put it, and I'd agree with, Aatrox as the best deck during the time he was the best deck, was the best deck, but it was training wheel best deck.
Why would you say training wheel?
Because it was the easiest for people to climb with and the simplest to use to get the wins with.
I mean, Aatrox drawing himself almost every game definitely made him a lot more consistent and easier to play because you're very often you're having Aatrox on turn 6.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that original World Ender was 13 mana, right? Meant that, sometimes you literally could cast it on 6 or the turn after on turn 7 with Aatrox if you Giga High rolled for the turn 6, but the more consistent one was, Aatrox on 6, flip him on 7.
Yep. All right. So we've gotten quite the list of champions so far. So what would you guys say would be the one that you would rank at the top after all these considerations and talks about all these different champions? Or like top 3 if one is too hard.
Twisted Fate.
If it was like putting ones at the top, I'd probably go with a top 3 looking like Poppy, Nami, and then TF.
Yeah, I think my top 3 is probably Bard, Poppy, Twisted Fate. That's what I would put for my 3.
I would say Twisted Fate, Bard, and Kaisa.
Yeah, I think like Twisted Fate, even today, is still seeing play in quite a few decks because like his play effect is just so versatile. His level 2 is among the strongest in the entire game, and when you're able to do that more consistently in the past, it was a pretty scary when they could like
And
turn 4 TF, turn 5 flip. You know.
going back to our earlier talk of new cards, even nowadays, because they printed formula, some people have been messing around with PZ TF again, and you can't. If your opponent doesn't answer TF right away, I've seen some games where he's leveling on 5 sometimes again.
I've also seen some TF decks with the new Mirai card. Like, why can't I think of the name of it?
Mischievous Mirai.
Thank you. So I've also seen some funny cat cards with that, and also just seeing Seraphine TF as well, 4LW pile, and still even Pirates. TF being slotted in Pirates has just been a staple for like the longest time now.
Yep. All right. I think that was a fun little discussion there. Just like going back through some memory lane there, just talking about some of the things that this game used to have. Realizing Hersh is a very good high roller.
True.
Well, I think that's enough. I think that's it for today. I'd like to thank Hersh and James for joining me for this episode.
My
Thank you for
pleasure.
having me.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing everyone next week.